I've been in the message for 37 years. I was actually born and raised in the message. The catalyst for me is a bit different than everybody else that I've talked to, because there wasn't one thing. It was not a overnight process. For me, we went through a long period of time that we realized that there were not churches that we were involved with. There was very little fruits of the Spirit. The people seemed to be segregated internally within the churches. Ultimately, God pushed me through this because there was 10 years of my life that was just getting worse and worse and worse, and for me personally, God had to humble my pride before I could be lifted up and realize that I myself was part of the problem. And I had, being a Collins, being in the family, one of the families that was the founding fathers, I had a sense of pride that my last name was Collins, and God literally took away all my pride. And coming out of the depression, it was through medication I suddenly started to become more and more aware of real life, and that had very little to do with my last name. And as I'm coming through it, all of a sudden it was just like a light switch flipped, night and day. I can remember reading my Bible, and I remember reading in the New Testament and thinking to myself, this is not the same book that I just read yesterday. And that part was overnight, and I can't explain what happened or why, but the period of 10 years that led up to it would fill your video camera full of video. It was an all-at-once sort of thing, and I know that will never make sense to anybody, but for me, none of it made any sense one night. I woke up and none of it made any sense. I sat down with one of the deacons in our church, and I showed him, at this point I had compiled a list of all of the discrepancies and issues, and I said, man, it seems like a few nights ago I just took the blue pill, and when I took it, none of it made any sense to me. There was a point in my life when I went through a complete mental nervous breakdown. As I was coming through the healing process, I can remember laying on my bed, and I was days bedridden, and as I'm laying there, I'm thinking about this one thought kept popping in my head: why is Billy Paul, such an old man in California, is still there? And I guess if you'd call it a catalyst, there was that before the explosion. It just kept eating on me, eating on me, eating on me, and this is the point where my body is healing, my mind is healing. Once it healed, then it was bam, none of it made any sense. Initially my message would have been to start with what we know is false. Take a look at the municipal bridge. There's no way possible that this happened. Take a look at the India prophecy. He admitted on tape that this failed. But my message now is different. None of that really matters. Take a look at the gospel and understand that there is a new covenant. For the first 37 years of my life, I realized I had never heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. We heard something that was called the gospel, and we associated it with signs and wonders or healing, but I had never heard the real gospel of Jesus Christ. I never knew that there was a new covenant. I never understood that there was a reason to have a Messiah. I never understood that there was a period of law and that the prophets were heralds of the old covenant to describe how mankind could not save themselves from works. And I never realized that the fulfilling of that law was entering into the eternal covenant of grace.